Okay, so we were on number 4. I drew the right triangle, and we have sides A, B, and then C as your hypotenuse, and your angle is 30 degrees. So let's go ahead and just label those sides. A, B, and C. First of all, it says identify the ratio A over B. So let's go ahead and just say what A over B is. So here's A over B. With respect to your 30 degrees, A is considered to be opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse. Opposite, that's right. And your B is considered to be opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse. Adjacent, that's right. And just for practice purposes, directly across from the 90-degree angle is the side that we will call our hypotenuse. Okay, so first of all, the ratio is saying A over B, so basically that is opposite over adjacent. And what trig ratio is opposite over adjacent? Right, that is tangent. Okay, so now it's also asking to go ahead and find that value. So basically, we need to find tangent of 30 degrees. If you remember correctly, tangent is sine over cosine, right? Okay, so we have sine over cosine, or if you're looking at your unit circle, sine represents what coordinate? The y coordinate, and cosine represents your x coordinate. So in other words, we're going to go to our unit circle. We're going to look up the 30-degree angle because it's a nice angle, and we're going to take the sine value, which is the y coordinate. We're going to put it over the cosine value, which is the x coordinate, and eventually we're going to copy, change, flip. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Tangent of 30. So let's look at our unit circle. Okay, our unit circle, here's 30 degrees right here. First tangent is sine over cosine. So the first one that I want to get is sine. Take a look here. Sine, or the sine value, or the y coordinate, happens to be 1/2. So that's the number that I'm going to place on the numerator. And I'm going to put it over. Let's take a look at the cosine. The cosine of 30 degrees is radical 3 over 2. Okay, so that's what I am going to put on the denominator part. Okay, so that is equal to a copy, change, flip. So we're going to copy the 1 over 2. We're going to change our division to multiplication. And we're going to flip the radical 3 over 2. And when we flip it, it becomes 2 over radical 3. Okay, what happens to our 2's? They cancel out. So we're left with 1 over radical 3. Or, because it is a computer-generated test, in other words, it rationalizes it, so it multiplies it by radical 3 over radical 3. So you get on the top radical 3, and on the bottom you get just 3. Okay, so remember, your test might actually have the nice version of 1 over square root of 3, but both are equivalent answers. They are the same thing, except one is the nice version, the other one isn't. Okay, so that's number 4. Let's move on to number 5. If you take a look, number 5 says, given that tangent is 8 over 23 and sine of theta is less than 0, find cosine of theta. Okay, so the first thing you want to do here, let me go ahead and clear this out and get a new page. Okay, it's saying that tangent is 8 over 23. So quickly, let's just take a look at our first piece of info. And we're going to have to bring back San Antonio Tequila Company. All right, so let's take a look at the first piece of given info. It says that tangent is 8/23. Well, is that a positive number or a negative number? It's a positive number. So remember, that means that we are going to be, where is tangent positive? Tangent is positive here where it has the letter A, because A stands for all of the trig values being positive, and it also is positive here where the T is, because of course T stands for tangent. That means that we will forget about the rest of the quadrants, the S quadrant and the C quadrant. Now, out of those two that are left, we're going to have to take our second piece of info and see where we're going to be at. It says sine of theta is less than 0. Okay, that's a fancy way. If a number or if an angle is less than 0, that's just a fancy way of saying that it's what? It's negative. So you may want to put in parentheses right above that, negative. So out of the two that are remaining, where is sine negative? Well, let's see. A here stands for all, so all of the trig functions are positive. So that means it can't be this one. And it has to be quadrant 3, because here in quadrant 3, the only trig function that is positive is tangent and its reciprocal, which happens to be cotangent. Okay, so we've decided that we're going to be in quadrant 3. So now let's go ahead and create our triangle, more specifically our right triangle in quadrant 3. So here we go. I'm going to make a right triangle. It is a little bit crooked, but that's okay. And we're going to go ahead and label. Here is my angle theta. Tangent. Now remember, let me go ahead and write that down. Our first piece of info says that tangent of theta is equal to 8/23. And if you remember SOHCAHTOA, that means that tangent is opposite over adjacent. So with respect to theta, opposite is this side right here. So this happens to be 8. And more specifically, it's -8, right? And adjacent happens to be this side right here, which happens to be 23, but more specifically, it's -23. Okay, so how do we find our missing side? It's asking for cosine of theta, so before we even answer the solution, we need to get our missing side. So it seems that what we're looking for is directly across from the right angle is the hypotenuse, so we're looking for the hypotenuse. So basically we have a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so basically we have, let's see, it doesn't matter what a or b is, so we really have -8. And notice that I'm placing the -8 in parentheses, because if you're going to use the calculator, you need to make sure it is in parentheses. Some of y'all still fail to remember that rule. And plus, in addition, every time you square a negative, it is always positive. Okay, so if we continue, we have -8 squared, which will give me a positive 64, plus -23 squared. Let's see what that is. So 23 squared. Okay, so 23 times 23. That gives me 529. All right. So I have 529 is equal to c squared. Okay, and I'm going to continue here. 64 plus 529. Let's see what that is. That is 593. C squared. And I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So technically I get the square root of 593 is equal to C. I don't think that gives me a nice number, but I'll check to see if it does. I don't think so. No, it doesn't. Okay. So my hypotenuse is square root of 593. That's what I'm going to go up here and do. Square root of 593. Okay, so now I can answer my question. My question is asking for the cosine of theta. So that means, if we remember correctly, I'm going to try to squeeze it in here. Cosine of theta. SOHCAHTOA says that it is adjacent over hypotenuse. So if we substitute, okay, let's label with respect to theta. Remember, this was opposite. This was adjacent. And this was hypotenuse right here. Okay, so if we label correctly, adjacent is negative 23 over radical 593. Okay, so that is the appropriate cosine, and we can always check, because if we were to do San Antonio Tequila Company, let's go ahead and just do it. San Antonio Tequila Company, again, you're in quadrant 3. You know that in quadrant 3, the only thing that is positive is tangent. Everything else is negative, and our cosine is indeed negative. Now, just because maybe it is a computer-generated test, so if you have a square root on the bottom, let's go ahead and just rationalize it. So 593 radical over radical 593. So we get negative 23 radical 593 over 593. You have to be comfortable with rationalizing, because since it's a computer-generated test, you don't know if it's going to give it to you the clean version or just the regular way that I let you, or that I allow you to leave it in. Okay, let me check one thing. 23 over 593, just to make sure that it's simplified. Okay, that is correct. All right, so we're good to go. So this right here is your answer, technically. And this one is also the nice version, the equivalent answer to it. Okay, so that's number 5. Let's take a look at number 6. Number 6 says identify the quadrant in which theta lies. Okay, so let's take a look at that right quick. So 6, let me get a clean one here. And let's take a look at it. All right, we're given 2 pieces of info. I like these. These are fun and very easy. It says sine is less than 0 and tangent is greater than 0. So you want to take your first piece of info. And in all honesty, this really is a San Antonio Tequila Company question. So let's just go ahead and create the quadrants. San Antonio Tequila Company. And we want to know what quadrant. Okay, So first of all, it's telling us that sine is less than 0. That's the first